Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Joshua Barnes, live from the Firstpost studios. First, let's take a look at the headlines. A Bangladeshi court sentences former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to 21 years in prison for corruption, days after handing her a death sentence in a separate crimes against humanity case. Russia orders the closure of Poland's consulate in the city of Irkutsk in a retaliatory move after Warsaw shut down a Russian consulate over sabotage accusations. French President Emmanuel Macron is set to announce the return of voluntary military service, nearly 30 years after conscription was scrapped, citing rising security threats from Russia. An earthquake of 6.3 magnitude strikes Indonesia's Sumatra island, adding to flooding and landslide disasters that have already killed over 25 people. And Venezuela revokes operating permits of major international airlines after they suspended flights, accusing them of acting on US pressure over regional military warnings. Hello and welcome. Today we begin with the dramatic turn of events that unfolded in the West African nation of Guinea-Bissau, where the army has seized control and the president has been arrested. But before we get into the details of that, listen to this. What you heard was heavy gunfire near the presidential palace. And with this, the men in military uniform took over the road leading to the building. A similar attack was reported at the National Electoral Commission, again by unidentified men. The head of the Presidential Military Office announced the closure of the country's land and sea borders, which were opened later. He claimed that a plan had been uncovered to destabilise Guinea-Bissau involving national drug lords to alter the constitutional order.
Established by the top leadership of different branches of the armed forces, the High Military Command for the Restoration of National Security and Public Order has just assumed full state powers of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau.
The country's new military leaders have suspended the electoral process and imposed a mandatory curfew. Guinea-Bissau is a small country with a population of around 2 million people. It is on the southern edge of the Sahel region, bordering it to the north.
The High Military Command for the Restoration of National Security and Public Order has decided to immediately depose the President of the Republic and, until further orders, to shut down all institutions of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau, to immediately suspend the ongoing electoral process, to close the land and maritime borders, as well as the national airspace.
Well, the takeover came 3 days after the presidential election on November the 23rd, which saw the deployment of close to 6,800 security personnel, including troops from the Economic Community of West African States Stabilization Force. After the election, the country's president, Umaro Sissoco Embalo, had declared victory. He was arrested and reportedly detained along with the Chief of Staff and the Minister of the Interior. Embalo had been ruling by decree since dissolving an opposition-dominated legislature in 2023. Meanwhile, opposition leader Domingos Simões Pereira, who was barred from the presidential election for filing his application late, has also reportedly been arrested. The disqualified leader had thrown his weight behind opposition candidate Fernando Dias, who had also declared a poll win. The action-filled day left the streets of the West African nation deserted, with its citizens staring at an uncertain future. With this, Guinea-Bissau has joined a long list of nations in the Sahel and outside, which are led by junta leaders. The latest military takeover of yet another African nation has sounded alarm bells across the globe. Guinea-Bissau's former colonial ruler, Portugal, has called for the resumption of the electoral process and discouraged any act of institutional or civic violence. The African Union, Regional Bloc ECOWAS, and the West African Elders Forum have expressed deep concern over what they described as a blatant attempt to disrupt the democratic process. The UNSC chief has urged all stakeholders to exercise restraints and respect the rule of law. Political instability is not new to Guinea-Bissau. It has experienced 4 coups since its independence in 1974, while multiple attempts have also been thwarted. The latest one was just last month, when the country's army arrested several senior military officers. The last presidential election in 2019 also brought in a political storm. Both main candidates had claimed victory that time as well. And what followed was a 4-month-long crisis. Guinea-Bissau is one of the world's poorest countries and a hub for drug trafficking between Latin America and Europe. This adds to its citizens' woes. And for more on this, we have with us Dr. Folomani Aina, who is an international security analyst joining us from London. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Dr. Aina, this coup comes before election results have even been announced. Does that process now become redundant? And what do you think might happen to the political leaders who claimed victory?
No, thank you very much. Unfortunately, the decision to take over by the military in many ways sets back the democratic process that Guinea-Bissau, has enjoyed for some time now. Essentially, also, this decision in itself, in many ways, negates the essence of democracy, and also it further jeopardizes the prospects of having a system, that represents the collective will and interests of the people of the country. And now it's very likely, unfortunately, that both the president of Guinea-Bissau and the opposition leaders are most likely going to remain under arrest, including potentially house arrest. And as we've seen in countries like Niger, with Bazoum, we're not sure how long this is going to take effect, because most of the time when the militaries come into power within these climes, they have always argued that they would expedite the transition process, but unfortunately the result has always been different because they perpetuate themselves in power longer than expected, and in many ways this rolls back the gains that have been made in terms of democratic consolidation.
Yes, absolutely. And Dr. Aina, of course, instability has been common since independence for Guinea-Bissau. Do you think that the latest coup will continue that pattern, or could it be part of future democratic efforts?
Well, unfortunately, in many ways, as I previously mentioned, this process in many ways is going to set back whatever progress Guinea-Bissau has made, and also it's likely going to continue for a while because in many ways, this is going to create new forms of instability, not only for the country itself, but also potentially for the broader region, including the prospects of peace and security. When you think about it, Guinea-Bissau over the years, in recent times, has been known to be a route, particularly for narcotics, including cocaine. In fact, the UN has termed it a narco state, and so there's every likelihood that those who seemingly take a benefit from the illegal activities in this regard would take advantage of the instability that has been caused by this new power vacuum, even though the military has tried to fill it, and they've said that one of the reasons why they are taking over power at this time is to potentially avert a plot, whatever the case may be. But even though we've also seen this as the same rhetoric that other juntas in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have used, because as I've argued previously, the military are ill-equipped, for the rigors of democratic governance. They don't have what it takes to lead a country. Even though Guinea-Bissau has just 2 million people, there's every likelihood that their assumption to power is only going to worsen the situation and create more instability on the ground.
Yes, and Dr. Aina, to finish, I want to build on those comments that you made. You, of course, listed a couple of other countries that have faced military coups in recent times. They have been prevalent across parts of the continent in recent years. What does this trend mean for the African continent moving forward?
Well, unfortunately, what this does is that it has the potential to continue to embolden juntas across the region to take advantage of whatever political misalignments that might be taking place within their countries on the one hand, but even more so is that this creates a lot of instability in the sense that non-state actors, particularly those who are bent on causing chaos and fomenting disorder within these states, will begin to see these vacuums that are being created as an opportunity to continually perpetuate, their acts of terror on these states. And even more so, a third angle is that it has the likely tendency to further isolate these countries from the broader international community, in addition to a fourth point, which is the prospects of it further severing state-society relations. In other words, it has the tendency to pit the state against, to pit society against the states, and across so many forms of discontent amongst the people. So bottom line is the military, even though they have taken over power, are most likely going to struggle with a legitimacy crisis, which is something we've seen across the region with other states, that have now been taken over by military coups.
Yes, in Guinea-Bissau, a lot for us to continue monitoring here on Firstpost Africa. Dr. Reiner, thank you ever so much for your time and your insight.
Thank you very much for having me.
We now move to South Africa, where the government has hit back after President Donald Trump said the US will not invite the African country for the G20 next year, which is to be held in Miami. President Cyril Ramaphosa has described Trump's announcement as regrettable. This comes after Trump, in a social media post, repeated unfounded claims of genocide and land seizures against white Afrikaners. He also said South Africa's refusal to hand over the G20 presidency in Johannesburg led to his decision.
They are killing white people and randomly allowing their farms to be taken from them. Perhaps, worst of all, the soon-to-be out-of-business New York Times and the fake news media won't issue a word against this genocide. At the conclusion of the G20, South Africa refused to hand off the G20 presidency to a senior representative from our U.S. Embassy, who attended the closing ceremony. Therefore, at my direction, South Africa will not be receiving an invitation to the 2026 G20, which will be hosted in the great city of Miami, Florida next year.
Trump also went on to say that all payments and subsidies to South Africa will be stopped effective immediately. After Trump's announcement, a statement was released by the presidency in Pretoria.
It is regrettable that despite the efforts and numerous attempts by President Ramaphosa and his administration to reset the diplomatic relationship with the U.S., President Trump continues to be vindictive and seek to apply punitive measures against South Africa based on misinformation and distortions about our country.
The breakdown in relations between Pretoria and Washington has worsened in recent weeks. The US administration chose to boycott Africa's first ever G20 Summit, with Trump citing human rights abuses in South Africa. And President Ramaphosa closed the ceremony in Johannesburg by banging a gavel after refusing a US plan to hand over the presidency to a more junior embassy official.
This gavel of this G20 summit formally closes this summit and now moves on to the next president of the G20, which is the United States, where we shall see each other again next year. The summit is therefore closed.
This dispute has whipped into a full breakdown of relations, which started in the White House. What was meant to be a conversation over trade and a potential relationship reset became an ambush from Trump on the baseless white genocide claims. Trump showed Ramaphosa videos showing what he called dead white farmers. It was later revealed that the footage had actually come from Congo. And more recently, a new Senate bill on a key trade agreement between the US and African nations proposed the explicit removal of South Africa. The African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA, provides duty-free access on close to 2,000 products. Republican Senator John Kennedy, who introduced the legislation, said AGOA should only be extended to countries that support US interests. He insisted that South Africa's geopolitical position requires re-evaluation. Expulsion from this trade programme will mainly impact agricultural products. There is also the matter of 30% US tariffs imposed on South Africa that are the highest in the sub-Saharan region. The Trump administration has targeted the growing South, notably BRICS nations, with steeper tariffs because of what it calls anti-American policies. Trump is hosting the G20 in his own yard in 2026, literally the Trump National Doral in Miami. The 21-member bloc accounts for 85% of the world's GDP and 2/3 of its population. But does he have the power to bar South Africa from the G20? Looking at Russia's expulsion from what was then the G8, a unanimous decision was made by all member states. That seems unlikely in this instance, but as we have seen in this war of words and now actions, the traditional course of diplomacy appears to have gone out of the window. We will continue tracking developments relating to US-South Africa relations. Let's shift our focus to Nigeria. The country has been in the spotlight over a wave of mass kidnappings. Its president, Bola Tinubu, has declared a nationwide security emergency, amid reports suggesting that Russia has offered to help. Tinubu took to social media to declare an emergency and called for more boots on the ground. He also asked Nigerians to remain calm and vigilant.
My fellow Nigerians, this is a national emergency, and we are responding by deploying more boots on the ground, especially in security-challenged areas. The times require all hands on deck. As Nigerians, we should all get involved in securing our nation. I urge all Nigerians to remain calm and vigilant, report suspicious activities, cooperate with security agencies. We are in this fight together, and together we shall win.
Tinubu has announced a series of measures to tackle the situation. He authorised the recruitment of an additional 20,000 police officers after ordering the hire of 30,000 personnel earlier. VIP guards are now pulled back and reassigned to frontline duties. Forest guards will be deployed to flush out bandits who are harassing local communities. And the National Youth Service Corps camps will be used for training. The emergency measure follows weeks of mass abductions across several states. On November the 17th, 25 girls were taken from a school in Kebbi State. They were later freed. The same day, gunmen abducted 64 people from their homes in Zamfara State. The next day, attackers struck a church in Kwara State, killing 2 people and taking 38 worshippers. On November 21st, gunmen abducted more than 300 students and staff from a Catholic school in Niger State. More than 260 are still missing. And on November 24th, 10 people were taken from Kwara. Amid the deepening security crisis in Nigeria, its ally Russia has reportedly come to the rescue, ready to assist Nigeria. According to reports, Russia's foreign ministry has praised Nigeria's serious efforts against terrorist groups. Moscow says they are ready to provide assistance in coordination with the UN and the African Union. Reports of this strategic support come at a very significant time. Earlier this month, US President Donald Trump accused the Nigerian government of being complacent towards terrorism. Trump then went on to instruct the Department of War to prepare for possible military action in Nigeria over alleged Christian persecutions.
I am hereby making Nigeria a country of particular concern. That's a legal definition. When the Christians or any such group is slaughtered, like is happening in Nigeria, the United States cannot stand by while such atrocities are happening in Nigeria.
Nigerian security forces are carrying out operations in multiple states, as Tinubu's emergency declaration gives them expanded powers. But mass abductions have become a recurring tactic in the north and central belt. Families living along the belt are living in fear.
We are here to cry to God and to call on the government of our day, especially President Bola Ahmed Tinubu Asiwaju, that he should please kindly intervene in this matter. He should have mercy. We are his electorate. We elected them for a reason.
Russia's offer to help could be a sign of relief for Nigeria, which is struggling to control its widening security crisis and a growing pressure from Donald Trump. But questions remain about how quickly the proposed Russian support could help affected communities. And for our final story today, let's shift focus to Morocco, where a French rapper has reportedly been handed a 7-year prison sentence over an alleged kidnapping bid. Mice, whose real name is Walid Georgi, is a French-based rapper with roots in Morocco. According to local media reports, a Moroccan court found him guilty of forming a criminal organisation, attempted kidnapping and unlawful confinement. Officials reportedly say the case centres on a violent plot that Mice masterminded from abroad. Moroccan investigators report that Mice was accused of plotting to kill a rival. Some reports suggest that the rapper had an ongoing financial dispute over a concert revenue with the man. He reportedly planned the kidnapping and unlawful confinement of the man while he was living in Dubai. He reportedly reached out to a Moroccan gang leader in Fez. The plan, simple and brutal. Find the target, kidnap and then torture him. But the plan fell apart as the attackers were arrested before carrying out the attack. But Mice insists he's innocent. He told the court he had nothing to do with the others. His lawyers argued there is no direct link between Mice and the men accused of carrying out the plan. But the court didn't agree and upheld the charges. Mice has reportedly received a 7-year sentence. The alleged ringleader got 10. 4 others were sentenced to 5 years. Moroccan media says in total, at least 10 people have been arrested in connection with the case. Mice wasn't exactly a free man before this trial. French authorities had already issued an international arrest warrant for him. Last year, he was convicted in France on an unrelated charge, but he never showed up in court. So, when he landed in Casablanca in January, Moroccan police detained him immediately. Mice was one of France's most streamed artists, more than 1 billion views and nearly 2.3 million subscribers on YouTube. But he also had a trial of run-ins with violence. Back in 2020, he became a victim of extortion attempts in his hometown of Sevran. That incident ended in a shootout and led to his escape to Dubai. And in 2022, after his manager was killed, he was suspected of planning a revenge plot. For officials in Morocco, the case is straightforward. For his fans, the verdict comes as a shock. But unless a higher court overturns the decision, Mice will be spending his next few years in a Moroccan prison. That's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Until then, thank you for watching.
Straight into the roof of the net. Nice one. Straight down the middle. So a good performance.
Hi, you're watching First Sports. I'm Rupa Ramani. Let's get started. On the show today, popular